Welcome to the dramatic story of 19th century Russia, struggle between progress and tradition. This is a tale of bold reformers and determined conservatives, each fighting to shape the empire's future. Their clash would ultimately change Russia forever. After Napoleon's defeat, Russia emerged as Europe's dominant power. The Congress of Vienna confirmed their status as a major power, rewarding them with Finland and Poland. Russia's military seemed invincible, their influence unprecedented, but beneath this powerful exterior, serious problems were brewing. The empire's foundation was cracking. Serfdom had created a social structure frozen in time. With two-thirds of the serfs mortgaged to the state by 1859, nobles treated peasants as property, trading them like commodities. This wasn't just morally bankrupt, it was economically devastating. Alexander I's reign tells a story of promising beginnings and disappointing endings. His early years brought hope, banned the secret police, new universities, and progressive reforms. But after Napoleon's defeat, everything changed. Liberal advisor Speransky was replaced by the reactionary Arkayev, and reform gave way to repression. While Western Europe raced into the industrial age, Russia remained stuck in the past. Until the 1840s, manufacturing relied almost entirely on manual labor. State-funded enterprises dominated the economy while private industry struggled to develop. The gap between Russia and the West grew wider every year. The bureaucracy had become a labyrinth of inefficiency. Officials avoided decisions by passing them upward. Corruption was rampant, and the system moved at a glacial pace. Even trivial matters required the Tsar's personal approval, creating endless bottlenecks in governance. The empire's ideology rested on three pillars: orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationality. This wasn't just policy, it was the regime's foundation. The Orthodox Church provided spiritual authority, autocracy maintained political control, and nationalism unified the population under Russian culture. The Crimean War exposed Russia's weaknesses to the world. Their military technology was obsolete, supply lines were inadequate, and command structure was chaotic. Britain and France's victory shattered the myth of Russian invincibility. Now, Alexander II recognized the need for change. His emancipation of 23 million serfs in 1861 marked the beginning of a new era. He modernized courts, created local governments, and restructured the military. These weren't minor adjustments, they were fundamental changes to Russian society. The Zemstvos represented Russia's first experiment with local self-government. These councils managed roads, schools, and local services. And while their power was limited, they gave Russia their first taste of democratic participation. The reform era ended violently with Alexander II's assassination in 1881. The People's Will's terrorists thought they were striking a blow for revolution, but they instead triggered a massive conservative backlash that would last for decades. Alexander III dismantled his father's reforms with ruthless efficiency. He strengthened the secret police, restricted university autonomy, and weakened local government. The pendulum had swung sharply back toward autocracy. The regime's darkest actions targeted Jewish communities. Over 250 pogroms erupted between 1881 and 1882 alone. These weren't spontaneous outbursts. They were organized campaigns of violence, actively encouraged by Alexander III's government to redirect public anger away from the regime. The consequences were devastating and far-reaching. Thousands of Jewish homes and businesses were destroyed. Mass emigration followed as families fled to safety abroad. The pogroms created deep wounds in Russian society and set precedents for future persecution. Even after the immediate violence ended, discriminatory laws continued to restrict Jewish rights and opportunities. Late industrialization brought new social tensions. Brutal factory conditions created an angry working class, while socialist ideas spread rapidly through urban areas. The Industrial Revolution was transforming Russian society from the bottom up. Now, Russia's expansion into East Asia reflected a dangerous overconfidence. They had dismissed Japan while asserting control over Manchuria and Korea. This combination of ambition and arrogance would prove disastrous. Japan's victory was comprehensive and humiliating, and while Russia struggled with extended supply lines, Japan's superior planning and proximity to home proved decisive. The destruction of both the Pacific and Baltic fleets marked a turning point in Russia's history. The defeat shattered public confidence in the regime. Every social class questioned the Tsar's leadership. The government's legitimacy crumbled, and revolutionary sentiments surged across the empire. In 1905, the revolution began with Bloody Sunday's tragic violence against peaceful protesters. Nicholas II was forced to promise a constitution and to create the Duma. For the first time, autocracy seemed to be giving way to democratic reform. But the regime survived by dividing its opponents and making strategic concessions. The Duma's power was severely limited, the opposition was splintered, and just enough reforms were granted to diffuse the immediate crisis. But the system's fundamental problems remained unresolved, setting the stage for 1917's Greater Revolution. Russia's cycle of reform and repression created a powder keg that would eventually explode. The great reforms of Alexander II showed that what was possible, while the reactionary policies of Alexander III and Nicholas II demonstrated what was being denied. Despite temporary victories for the autocracy, each crisis left the regime weaker than before. The peasants remained poor, workers remained exploited, and minorities remained persecuted. These unresolved tensions would ultimately lead to the collapse of the Romanov dynasty in 1917. The lesson was clear. A nation cannot forever resist the tide of change through force alone.